Port. Curtis Fleming is there on the edge of the area. Fleming for Craig Hignett. Hit it, Higgy. Higgy hits the treble!
Avenelli coming alive again. Juninho wants the ball played to him. Avenelli spots out Emerson!
Hello and welcome to the Boro Breakdown podcast with Jonny, Dana and Tom. We're the Boro podcast that gives you all of your Boro matches chat in a podcast. And well, a win and a draw this week see Middlesbrough move to 8th in the championship table. And guys, as always, we'll do our one key takeouts from the week. And Dana, would you like to go first?
Yeah, I think my key takeout from this week is that we are one lucky football team, because people will mention the Luton game. We kind of got away with daylight robbery there at Kenilworth Road because we should not have emerged with a point from that football match. But also, how are we 3 points off the playoffs? Like, I'm sat here and I just don't understand how we're 3 points off the playoffs, because in my head we are a million miles away from it, given our performance levels, given how easy we are to target, given how we just have all of these deficiencies that we have spoken about on this podcast many, many times, and we keep seeing them, and there's basically no improvement, hence the title of this podcast, Treading Water. We're basically seeing no progression, or if we do, it's one step forward, 2 steps back. And yet we are 3 points off the playoffs. I think Hull did us a favour yesterday, drawing against West Brom and taking a point from the Baggies when they were 1-0 up, but honestly, the Championship is so crap this season, and especially that charge, if we want to call it that, for 5th and 6th. It's just the fact that we are still in the playoff picture speaks volumes of the quality of the Championship this season. I do not know how we are 3 points off the top 6.
Yeah, results are definitely going Boro's way, and they have done all of this week. And to be honest, on the face value of it, I thought, you know what, I'm glad that we got a point yesterday, because before the game I was thinking, we have to win today. And then after about 30 minutes in, we were probably the third best team on the pitch, with Luton and the officials being the other two. And, it was just an awful, awful performance in that first half. And I agree with you, Dan. I thought, wow, we are very, very lucky not to be at least 3-0 down here. And yeah, we were all right against QPR, and that was enough. But it's quite frustrating. I think if there was a word I would like to say, it would be regressed. I would say we've regressed quite a lot since January. Injuries and players leaving definitely played a part in that. But for right now, yeah, I'm just we are 3 points off the lots, but I just don't want to. I don't even want to consider it. I feel like it's done, but it's be very typical Boro to go on some mad streak now and and just end in the playoff places. But is what it is. But Tom, what's your one key takeout?
One key takeout is this next 8 games, is massive if we want to achieve anything from this season. I mean, I'm still kind of doubting our ability to do it based on what I've seen. But you look at what the last 5 games, we've won 3, drawn 1, lost 1. So it doesn't feel like we should be having this sort of conversation. If just a completely neutral party looked at our form and looked at the table, they think, no, Boro could probably do it. But then they haven't seen the performances that we have. We said from the start of this season, playoffs had to be kind of a minimum, or at least that's what the club was aiming for. It was the only way we would kind of be able to measure progression on what we did last season. And I saw a stat yesterday, I think it was, that we were exactly the same place points-wise as we were last season, except we're better off in the league because the quality of the league isn't as good. So I don't know. Like you say, it would be typical Boro if we come back in this next 8 games and achieve something, get into the playoffs, and get our name in the hat for it. But I'm not convinced by our recent performances. And yeah, it's coming back against Oxford as well. I wouldn't be surprised if we then won that and then we're 1 point out, or we're level or something like that. And we're just how are we even here? But It's like I say, it's going to be massive this next 8 games, and I think as a one remaining bit of hope, it would just be that we come back after the international break. We've got a couple of centre backs back from injury. We can maybe play a team which is mostly round pegs and round holes, and just try and achieve something for the rest of the season. And hopefully, we come back after a week on the training ground and we put everything right and we play the way we know we can. But we've said this quite a few times. I've said this quite a few times, and it's never happened. So I don't see why this time is going to be any different.
I was going to say, do you believe that? Do you think that'll happen, Tom?
Absolutely not. But
yeah, I don't either.
There's any chance.
Yeah, well, let's talk about the games then, because Boro went into the game against QPR with no fit centre backs, but goals from TC22 and AD15 gave Boro the 2-1 win. Sorry, winding up there, Dana. Goals Chloe Conway and Anthony Dyke gave Boro all 3 points. And Dana, what was your thoughts on the performance? Because we went ahead, of course, but we still made hard work of it towards the end.
Yeah, I mean, did we? I don't know. I didn't feel a nervous disposition towards the end of the game with the scores at 2-1, but I was quite surprised at how complimentary some people were about Boro's performance in this game, because I didn't think that we were any great shakes. And what I took from it more so than Boro's performance was how poor QPR were. They had Michael Frey up front, and you're coming up against Neto Borges and Jonny Howson as your central defenders. I'm not going to sit here and act like Neto Borges can't play centre back. He's a defender. He can play that. So too can Howson. But when you've got such a striker with that stature that Michael Frey has, get the ball into the box, test them physically, and they just never did that. So I thought that was very interesting from Marty Cifuentes, because when you look at the other players in their front four, very diminutive. Technical quality, yes, but very small. And then when they brought on, I think it was, who did they bring on afterwards? It was Paul Smith. They brought on Paul Smith, and I'm thinking, well, you've just made your front line even smaller. So I think they kind of did Boro a favour there. But I didn't really think Boro were particularly great in this game. And to say that, well, it was an improvement from the Swansea game is not a compliment, because we were so bad against Swansea. And I was also surprised at a narrative that was forming afterwards of, well, we showed more desire, we showed more commitment. And I really do think that Hayden Hackney 50-50 with Koki Saito was the moment that essentially made people think that. Because maybe people will say, well, that was enough. That was essentially what was needed to basically say, okay, we showed more commitment, and fair enough if that's the standpoint. But really, I didn't see a big difference in how Boro approached that game against QPR and how we approached the games before that. Because I still see commitment from this Boro side. I don't see them really pulling out of challenges. I don't see them showing that they don't care or that they're not committed. So the midweek game was very, what was coming out of that game I thought was very interesting. I still wasn't convinced, and I am still not convinced by Boro. I want to see more. For me, the major takeout from that game midweek, even though it was good to win, was that QPR were terrible. So that's basically my thoughts on the match. I didn't think Boro were great. I thought it was more that QPR were pretty poor in that game. And if that makes me a Debbie Downer, then so be it. I'm back on the podcast like I never left, I guess.
Yeah, look, I agree with you. I thought we were really poor yesterday, but during the midweek game, I thought we were similar to what you were saying, a bit average. I think there's always good patterns of play in our game, and maybe we've become normalised to that, or that's the benchmark of what Middlesbrough should be. I thought on the balance of play, QPR were really poor in a defensive shape. They weren't pressing as much, and I thought that was a bit strange to sit off Middlesbrough and let them play and try and let them play through the thirds and those little gaps. And you thought, oh well, we're going to create chances. And realistically, we should have been 2 or 3-0 up at half time. The game should have been dead, but we did miss a couple of those chances. And in that second half, we started off okay. Wasn't a reaction at all from QPR. So backing up again, your point there of how poor QPR was. And Anthony Dyke gets his carbon cut out same goal as he did against Leeds. And you think, okay, maybe we kick on, maybe we try and get that third goal. But it's never really materialised, and the game felt really flat, and there wasn't too much I was very complimentary about. I was just like, yeah, cool, we're ahead. But as soon as that goal went in, I was like, oh, right, okay, here we go. We're going to make it a bit more difficult. And they had a chance right at that very end. Fell to the goalkeeper. And if it fell to anyone else,
Oh
it was
yeah,
more probably going to be a 2-all draw.
yeah.
And you're sitting there thinking, well, that's typical Boro, and that's the season done and dusted. But you managed to get the win in the end. And what I found really interesting is that it took QPR 80 minutes to realise that we weren't playing with a natural centre back. They just nothing was trying to get him behind, nothing to try and pull the defender away. There was very much we'll play in front of Middlesbrough. We hit our target man, and there was no runs around it. So realistically, it made the centre back's job in Borges and Howson a fairly easy job on the night. But Tom, how do you think Howson fared? Appreciate you returned to the starting 11, of course, after a long layout, and playing centre half, not his natural position, but you have seen him play there under Jonathan Woodgate, and he played there right back too, and has played there throughout his career. But do you think he did okay?
Yeah, did all right. I'm not gonna fully jump on the Jonny Howson bandwagon or anything, but I thought he did all right coming back from injury, filling in a centre back. I did think to give him a bit of credit in terms of being able to run out from the back and play out from the back. He's probably a bit more of an improvement there than, say, Edmondson, for example. And that's not me just picking on Edmondson, just the first name that came to mind. But having a centre midfielder in centre back will always kind of help with that, and the type of player that Jonny Howson is will help with that. So it was good having him back. I think he said in an interview it was maybe a little bit earlier than he would have liked, but the team needs have to come first in that scenario, and he did kind of rush back to do it. Fair play, he's came in, he's played well, considering he has been missing for a large amount of the season as well. Didn't really stick out as a weak point or anything.
Yeah, he didn't, and appreciate it was another good moment in the game and seeing Anthony Dijksteel scored there, and it was quite a good goal, wasn't it?
It was. You know what? Do you remember that Afonso Alves banner of Boro goal machine? They should bring that back out and just plaster Anthony Dijksteel's face over it. He scored 3 goals this season. Where's this come from? And yeah, it was a carbon copy. I mean this in the most complimentary way, that goal included just a very Dijksteelism, because he's very awkward and gangly when he's driving with the ball, isn't he? He never really seems secure in being in possession necessarily. It always feels like he's about a millisecond away from losing the ball through a bad touch or something like that. But credit to him, even with that, he weaves through and he scores with his left foot as well again. So yeah, very good goal from Dijksteel, and what was much needed, because that game, the whole of it, the whole evening really, I don't know whether it was just me. Well, I don't think it was just me. It just felt flat. Like the atmosphere was flat. I think a lot of people just observing social media and speaking to people as well, they just didn't really feel up for this game. And I get that. Boro's form has been inconsistent, and we have just come out of a pretty bad rut, which I think the feeling of that is still very much present. So it was good to get that second goal and give us a little bit of breathing space before they halved the deficit. And Paul Nardi neatly scored. I mean, we're pretty fortunate actually it wasn't Seni Dieng that was in goal for QPR, because he has scored before against the Mackhams actually. So yeah, good goal from Dijksteel.
Out of contract in the summer, Dana. Do you think he should get a new deal?
Not for me, no. I know it might be a bit harsh, because I do think that Dijksteel has been good when he's come back this season, but I said on a previous pod, I want to see Boro be ruthless in the transfer window. I want to see improvements, and I think with Dijksteel, it has felt, or it did feel, and before this resurgence, that Dijksteel, the writing was kind of on the wall for him. I remember when Carrick played him further forward, actually, on a right wing, because he just didn't really seem to have a place. So massive credit to him for getting his position back in the team. And I know that it came through injury as well, but you have to take your opportunity when you get it, and it was presented to him and he's taken it. But for me, I would like to see Boro bring in another right back, or maybe 2, to be honest. With Ayling, I'm kind of like, if Ayling goes, which he's not out of contract or anything, so I don't think he will, then it's kind of like, okay, thank you for your service, goodbye. But I would like to see an improvement on right back. So respectfully, I think I wouldn't give Dijksteel a new contract.
Yeah, and look, we brought one in the January with Josh Dedde from Celtic, and he seems to be progressing quite well in under 21s. He's now on the bench for the first team, so you are starting to maybe
Isn't he
see a
injured?
replace. He was on the bench yesterday, so
He just re-emerged. He did get
just
injured, didn't he?
spawned,
Which is
just spawned, yeah.
very Boro for him to be injured at some point. But yeah, good to see him back on the bench then, I guess. I didn't
Yeah,
clock that.
Yeah, so there's him there. You know, you've got Aylan, who I just don't think should feature next year. I think with Dijksteel, I think it's just a great opportunity for him to reset and move to the next thing. I don't think he'd be short of offers. I think he's a very respectable championship player. But if Middlesbrough want to keep progressing, then I think we need to improve quality all around the team. And looking at that summer transfer window, I think it's massive. I think the turnover in players is going to be huge. If you layer in another management team who might come in if Michael Carrick was to depart, I think that is a very, very difficult few months in the start of next season for Boro. And, you know, new managers come in, a lot of new players, a lot of newness, takes time to gel. Boro could find himself in a really difficult position next year, like really difficult if recruitment's not 100% of what it should be. So I know we'll probably speak of that towards the end of the season, but my flag's up there. I'm thinking could be a bit of an all or nothing few games for Middlesbrough to see how they end up, to be honest. But let's keep focused on the game because Tommy Conway scored his 11th goal of the season. He's currently tracking better than Manuel Latte at the moment in terms of goals per minute. Has he softened the blow at all, given that Lath has left now and we've still got someone there who is at least scoring goals?
I wouldn't say softened it. I've said before on the podcast, I personally rate Conway above Latte in terms of consistency and being a finisher. Because I mean, as much as everyone loved watching Latte play, thinking back on him, people are going to remember the good moments. They're not going to remember the games, where we went 7 games not being able to hit a barn door, and then being able to get into his stride, and then he's scoring goals from touches that no one has any right to be scoring goals from. Tommy Conway's a little bit different to that in that he is a bit more of a consistent striker. I don't think he softened the blow in that. I think we always need 2 out-and-out strikers in this team. Now we've got one, and we've got a few people who can play striker, who can play in other areas. If it was last season and we'd lost like the laugh or at the start of this season, it would have been worse if we didn't have Conway. But that's not necessarily saying it's softened the blow. You should always have 2 strikers who you can rotate in and out of the team, and ultimately we have weakened ourselves there. And this is another area other than right back that we need to address in the summer, because bringing in Iheanacho for Latte Laugh has been a horrific signing. And it's nowhere near a replacement. So, I mean, it just goes to show that when I've just said there, we've got a few people who can play striker, and we haven't got 2 out-and-out strikers. I just completely forgot about Iheanacho because he has been anonymous on the pitch at times. We need 2 out-and-out strikers, and having Tommy Conway there, great. But then we still needed someone to rotate in when Tommy Conway is, in need of a break, and we no longer have that.
I like Conway, I really do, but I do think we miss Latte Lath, and I don't actually think we miss Latte Lath because of Conway's contribution, because he's still contributing. We miss Latte Lath because of Iheanacho. I think that in terms of a downgrade, I don't think that you'll find a worse one in the EFL this season than Latte Lath to Iheanacho. Just not the right fit. You've gone from Michael Carrick strikers, Cameron Archer, Latte Lath. The comparison between them, they're busy strikers. They're explosive. They press. Iheanacho barely moves. And I've seen two good things from Iheanacho in 444 minutes that I've seen him on the pitch, and they were two good touches in home games, actually. One of them, he took it down beautifully in the box, and then the other one was, I'm pretty sure it was against QPR, actually, where he just cushioned...
It was, yeah.
Yeah, he just cushioned a pass down. They're the only things that I've seen from Kelechi Iheanacho that I could say, oh, that was good. Two touches in 444 minutes. And Craig Johns was pretty honest in his contributions, in his match ratings yesterday about Kelechi Iheanacho, because he just said that he was ineffective and his fitness and just lack of mobility is a problem for Boro at the moment, and it is. But yeah, going back to the discussion about Conway, I like him. I just think that when I compare him to Lath, the thing that sets Lath apart for me is how varied his goals are. He can score with his left foot, his right foot, his head. And I take your point there about his consistency issues, particularly at the beginning of this season, the beginning of last season as well, we mustn't forget. But I do think I just about prefer Emmanuel Lath. There's not a lot between them, but just because of how he can score in different situations. And Jonny, me and you have spoken on the group chat during games before of just saying, Tommy, take it on your left foot. There's a reluctance for him to do that, when actually that's probably the better move for him, the better play for him, to take the ball on his left foot instead of cutting inside and using his right. But that's really the only kind of criticism that I have of Tommy Conway. I want to see more variety in his finishing, use that left foot more, and hopefully he can work on that. But I do think we miss Lath. I do. And it's only really because of Kelechi Iheanacho, who has genuinely been, as Tom said, a horrific signing.
Yeah, it's all ball to feet with Iheanacho, and in and around that, I think you're struggling. And you can't really have that, especially when your back's against the wall. And I alluded to a point a couple of podcasts ago when I was saying Iheanacho would be great if you're winning, but if you're getting beaten, it's difficult. It's probably not the right player to have on the football pitch. And where Middlesbrough are playing at the moment, it just doesn't feel right. And yeah, I think we miss Emmanuel Lath to some aspect of it as well. You know, he's a bit of a unique profile in a way, and has some fantastic movement, but his finishing was not always particularly great. If it was someone who was one-on-one between Lath and Conway, I'd probably pick Conway because I felt, there's a bit more confidence there. But Lath would pull something out of nothing. And I think the balance of that is fantastic. And, he's made his move now, and Middlesbrough are in a position where they can only rely on Tommy Conway, and he's having to work the channels quite a lot because he can't hold the ball up as much. And that is the right approach to work with Tommy Conway. Try and get him in and around areas where you can get him behind and make that movement right. And yeah, look, we've said about his left foot. I mean, there's too much that I've said in our group chat around the frustrations of that, and it's just being like, just dig on your left foot. If you're just switching, you get hit it across goal, you'll be all right. But for whatever reason, he doesn't do that. He tries to find a different angle, tries to pull a defender away, and tries to maybe place it in that bottom corner. So, well, there's no complaints. So I think what he's done this season, Tommy Conway, so far has been brilliant. He's came in, he's hit the ground running, he's took his chances when he's needed to, and although if he didn't have that injury, I think he would be in a lot more goals than what he currently is. And you're thinking, wow, we could maybe hit, the Burnley Slaven record, but I just don't think that will happen. And I think there's a lot to do in the summer, a lot to do. We've got to take the pressure off Conway, but Conway falls under that profile for me, who's someone who's a very versatile forward and not a proper number 9, what Lath probably was. But he's doing a fantastic job, and I really like Tommy Conway. I think he's been arguably our best signing, maybe Ed Morris, I don't know. But I just think he's been brilliant. But let's talk about the Luton game then, because Boro survived in Alamo in the first half, and really poor finishing from Luton, to be honest. It was absolutely god-awful, and God bless Mark Travers as well in the Boro net. But Tom, what were your thoughts on Boro's showing in the first half against Luton?
It's a horror show, wasn't it? I mean, it's a horror show for everyone except Mark Travers, who had absolutely 10 out of 10 game for me. But for as bad as Boro's showing was, Luton's finishing was possibly even worse. When Asgard unleashed his inner Kanu by skying over from 2 yards out, I was kind of looking at like how did that stay out? But we just couldn't seem to get out of our half. And I found myself thinking at times during the first half, I hope this isn't going to be a recurring theme for the next 8 games of, you know what, we'll pick up a result at home and then we'll look like a completely different team away from home and not be able to get out of our half, because it happened at Swansea last week as well for a lot of the game. Yeah, it was not a good one to watch. And from what I've just said there, it seems like we're having the exact opposite problem to something I've complained about earlier in the season, where we couldn't win at home, and now we've won a couple on the bounce at home, and now we're struggling away. Just want some consistency. Just win home and away. We're not asking for much. Just win every game. Like,
don't concede any goals. Just be perfect every game, and just win, lads. Just as simple as that, really. Just win. Not asking for much. But Tom, is there anything else to add there?
No, nothing else for me. Like I say, it was just an absolute horror show to watch in that first half, and second half you were just kind of thinking, can't get any worse. So, I mean, it can, but just before anyone goes Mick McCarthy, but yeah, it would be a struggle performance-wise to get any worse. Score sheet-wise, could get a lot worse.
Oh yeah, 100%. And then Tom alluded to it. Why? But why were Luton so dominant in that first half?
I think it's because they dragged Boro into physical battle and we just didn't have the answer to it. And you know what? It reminded me a lot, I was thinking during the game, of the Portsmouth match, where they also were pretty physical in their approach and they just gave it to Boro in that way. And there was one point in, was it the first half? It might have been it was the first half actually, amid that onslaught, where arguably our most physical non-defensive player in Morris got absolutely bullied off the ball from Carlton Morris. And then they attacked, and it was one of the chances that they had that they really should have put away. And I'm thinking, Christ, if Ian Morris is getting bullied off the ball in that way, then that sets a really bad precedent for the rest of this team. Because as soon as we come up against a side like that I was expecting actually that version of Luton at the Riverside, because that's the Luton that I've known in the Championship since they've been in here. And I thought, right, okay, this is very reminiscent of that Portsmouth match in which they also gave us that physical battle and we just couldn't deal with it. And we're trying to play pretty football on a pitch that Michael Carrick was saying after the match was bobbly and stuff like that. We'll get onto that later. But there's times, and Tom, you've mentioned it on the podcast before, where we're like playing passes that, okay, they might end up to the player that they're intending to go to, but they're still wide. They're still not necessarily accurate. There's players that are trying to like make up the yards just to meet the pass. It's little things like that. The complete disconnection of our play when we did get the ball meant that Luton were just submerging us. And I do not know for the life of me, you or Tom, how we didn't concede in that game. We've got to thank our lucky stars and Mark Travers for that, because his goals prevented actually in that game was 1.36. And I mean, there's probably not a larger goals prevented number in the Championship this game week from a goalkeeper. He absolutely saved us, and that point was because of Mark Travers. We just got absolutely bullied by the physical battle that Luton gave us.
I guess he was the only positive of the game then, Mark Travers, Tom.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't think of anything else. I can only remember Travers saves or Asgard missing from 2 yards out from that game. And occasionally Luton Town players knocking our players on the floor. I did say to my dad through the second half, I was like, I wish we had a ref who, because usually it's the opposite for me. If a ref's blown for absolutely everything, I'm like, it's boring. Like, it's contact sport and let him get on with it. And then through the Luton game in the second half, I was like, I wish we had a ref who just like wasn't letting everything go and could give us some fouls and stuff, because we were getting bullied all over the place. But I will say, if Luton go down this season, talking back to our striker situation, I wouldn't mind us going in for Carlton Morris for next season as another option up front with Tommy Conway, because I thought he was really good yesterday, and he would add a little bit up front. Add a lot up front if you're comparing him to Iheanacho, that we don't have at the moment. So if Luton go down and they're in that sort of position, I would definitely be looking at him as an option if I was Boro's recruitment team.
Yeah, I was on a Luton podcast earlier this week, and they were saying how much they hate Carlton Morris. So I feel like he might be available.
Really?
Yeah. So they said he just does nothing, and he hasn't done anything throughout his career. So I was like, well,
He
fair
probably
enough.
does more than Iheanacho, to be fair.
Yeah. So
At least he shouts a bit.
Yeah, a bit of passion.
Bit of passion.
Yeah, I quite like Carlton Morris. I think he had a fantastic season, obviously in the Premier League and in the season prior. And he's a player who is very aggressive and would offer Middlesbrough something different. And will Luton go down? I think the game yesterday is probably the reason why they are going to go down. And the misses that they had and the slightest bit of pressure from Middlesbrough, you could see them defensively were a bit shaky. So in that second half, I thought if Middlesbrough were able to get the foot on the ball and try and break the lines a little bit more and get into good areas, we have a really good chance of getting something from the game. I mean, at the end of the first half, I was like, bloody hell, just put me out my misery. I've got a kitchen to clean. I've got to do a bit of plants to see, plants
Kevin
to,
Blackwell.
Hold on. I was going to say, Kevin Blackwell.
I got things to do, got things to do, people to see. And, we held on, and I thought we were hopefully going to try and get something in that second half. But it was contrasting halves, because in that first half, the underlying numbers showed in terms of XG that Luton had a 2 XG to Middlesbrough's 0.02. So it showed how, fantastic we were going forward. And then in the second half, it really flattened out to 0.39 to 0.22. And was it really a case, guys, of Boro shearing things up, or was just Luton completely running out of steam?
I think Luton ran out of steam. They played that first half with a lot of intensity, and I just don't think that you can keep that up all game. There's going to be peaks and troughs at the very least, in which there's, dips in energy levels and intensity. But I think it was Luton running out of steam, to be honest. But I will give credit to Boro in a way, because makeshift back four, of course. Let's not act like they're not professional footballers, to be honest. But it's still not Ealing Jr.'s favoured position. It's not Jonny House's favoured position. It's not Neto Borges' favourite position. Dijksteel at right back is kind of, that meme of the what's it that's like keeping the door closed.
Yeah.
That's Anthony Dijksteel. But there were some good defensive moments, I will say, some good blocks. But on the whole, the narrative of the game really was that Luton's finishing was poor and that they ran out of steam in the second half. I just didn't think they could have kept up that level of intensity, which feels bad actually to say, because I feel like, especially with the QPR game as well, I've been very well. Yeah, we won, but QPR were crap, and yeah, we maybe stemmed the tide a little bit, but did we actually? It was Luton that were running out of steam. So I feel a bit bad, but that's just how I saw the game and the games this week.
Yeah, and look, when you're pointing about Middlesbrough players playing out of position, you have Azaz on the left, which I don't think is his best position. I think I prefer more centrally. You got Iheanacho on the pitch, which again is out of position for him, and you've also got Tom's just got that joke, and then you've got
left back in the changing rooms. That's his position.
And you got Delano Bergzog on the right, who I think should be playing on the left. So all of that with playing players out of position is, a bit of a recipe for disaster, and they've managed to get through it. But you've managed to get through a game against a side who, put it bluntly, have been terrible all season, and you've got to be better than that. And you can still argue, well, they were in the Premier League last season, they've kept that group, and on paper they probably do have a fairly decent side, but they're in a really bad moment, and you've got to put them to the sword, and you've got to try and get a much better result. But on the face of it, a point was probably a good point in the end for us, based on what the performance was, especially in that first half. But Michael Carrick did say in his post-match press conference, and Danny, you just alluded to it earlier, and he said it wasn't pretty, but there were good things from the game. He said it was difficult. The pitch was so dry and bobbly, and it was difficult to pass from me to you. And, since we're quite a few miles away, guys, it would be still difficult to do that. But Crane was challenging, but I thought we might have nicked it towards the end. We'll take the point. Anyone got any thoughts on Michael Carrick's post-match presser there?
Not really. I've stopped listening to him, to be honest. I don't think there's anything to be gained from listening to his post-match interviews or his press conferences. I can't remember what the pitch looked like. To be honest, I think I'm already trying to put that game out of my mind. I feel like we've all played on pitches like that, but it was generally in secondary school where you've got no one taking care of the pitch, so. Might have been the case. I think it was, as they said on BBC Tees, a dry, hot, sunny day, so could have dried out the ground. But I feel like that type of thing shouldn't affect it as much as he's claiming there.
Yeah, me and one of my uni friends were talking about it. It's like it was kind of being built up as if Boro were playing in Dubai. They're in Luton. I don't know how much the sun affects things, but I'm genuinely saying I don't know how much it affects things, but what I take from that is, okay, the pitch was dry and it was bobbly. And there's a point in the game where you acknowledge that. So why didn't you deviate? Why didn't you change it? I can't remember Boro really doing that, to be honest. And I don't mean little tweaks. I mean, change the whole approach. Go long, hoof it if you need to. If the pitch is that big of an influence, switch up your approach. Now, again, I'm going to say I can't remember Boro doing that, so they might have done. I'll have to watch the game back. Obviously, we've recorded this on a Sunday, so it's difficult. They don't put the full 90 on until the Monday. But yeah, it's one of those where I think Michael Carrick's in a period now where all of his words are being picked at, and that's just another example of that, really. But yeah, I guess I take from that well, why was there no adaptability from that, essentially?
Do you think Carrick's getting at that stage like Woodgate had, where everyone's kind of picking on interviews like the table's lying and stuff, like almost like it's going to become a meme in a little bit where you're just like, I don't really believe what you're saying at the moment?
I don't think he believes what he's saying, to be fair. Like when you look at post-match press conferences from any manager in general, it's all just PR of what, why next, isn't it? Like, oh, here's what the game was like today. Here's why it happened, and I kind of fought the lads, and we're going to work on the training ground next week. Like every single manager does it. I just think sometimes post-match press conferences and even pre-match are just pointless because you're never going to get anything from it. You know what I mean? It's just for the media. No one's that bothered. You may as well just give out a written document at the end of the game of just Carrick's words, and it will save everyone a bunch of time. And yeah,
to be fair,
go on.
I was going to actually give Carrick credit, and I don't know how much credit this is, but against Swansea, he did get a lot of heat from his post-match press conference in which he said, it's not the time for me to discuss it. I'm pretty sure it's after Swansea. So at least he's maybe given a little bit of context as to the performance there, which is not what he did in the game that I'm referring to, which I think it was Swansea. So there's that at least. But yeah, going back to our point, like, why didn't you adapt then? If you knew that the pitch was difficult at a point during the game, then switch up your approach and be a little bit uncomfortable. Go towards an approach that isn't your favoured one, because he said afterwards we couldn't really pass along the floor, which is what we like to do. So switch it.
Yeah, you have some direct players on the bench as well. Marcus Forss could have came on that right hand side, could have switched Delano over and put Finazaz more centrally, try and work the channels a little bit more, really get in between that back five. There always is gaps between that wing back and the centre back, and you're able to peel off from there and try and make something a little bit more happen. And if you have to go a bit more direct, go a bit more direct. You can be an adaptable footballer. It's not hard. I think everyone's played a bit more of a direct game when they've needed to. And, if we had to go down that route, we had to go down that route. But it's one of those things, isn't it? The quicker you hit the ball forward, the faster it comes back to you. And you get into a bit of a basketball game. And Middlesbrough's aim probably in that second half was probably not to make it like that, because I think in the first half we were a little bit suspect to it. And, the adaptability, you could maybe put an extra person midfield, maybe try something a little bit different. But on the balance of it, you probably don't want to lose that game. I think in the second half, you go out and you try and get something, or just try and grind something out, because they weren't getting anything in that first half. And, credit to Boro in some aspect that they got the point in the end. But before it, I expected so much more. And still after it, I'm still expecting so much more. But it's where Middlesbrough currently at the moment. And, we are in a weird position where all of us, and I think a lot of our listeners and fans of the club are thinking, well, the season's pretty much done. So no one's fully excited for the position where Middlesbrough are currently in at the moment, because it feels unrealistic, even though we're in a very realistic position. But a couple of wins can change everything. If we won yesterday, it was 4 wins in 5, and you're thinking, well, maybe. But we'll see how we fare out in the international break, I guess, and players come back. I don't know if Dave, you got a point there.
Yeah, I just want to hear from the people that do have hope still for this season. I know a lot of people are checked out, and I think that's completely understandable. I am too. But I do want to hear from the people that aren't checked out, that still have belief that Boro can make this season a good one, because all I've really ever seen is the doom and gloom. And we have obviously been a part of that doom and gloom because of what we've seen and how we perceive the football to be and the performances. But I would like to hear from people that have the opposite mindset to that.
Yeah, definitely. Well, if you want to, you can message us, you can DM us, you can do all that kind of fun stuff. And that kind of leads us quite nicely onto podcast questions. Yes, podcast questions. Every week you get the chance to ask us a question via Boro_breakdown on Twitter, email theborobreakdown@hotmail.com, or just find a way. And, it could be by owl, it could be by letter, it could be by anything. Who knows? We'll somehow find a way to answer it on the podcast. One question today, it's from Chris, and he asks, Carrick isn't concerned about the lack of shots on goal, let alone on target. Why shouldn't this be a concern? Who would like to answer this one? No one. Okay, so I will answer it then. Based on that, I would say I agree with Carrick. I am not concerned about Boro going forward. I think we're absolutely fine. We still create enough, but there's definitely been a decline in Middlesbrough's output from January, and I think Carrick has been let down slightly in the window. Bringing in EHL for Lath is a big downgrade. I think that Ilan Jr. is not playing his right position, which is not particularly great, and also playing a separate league for a number of years, so getting up to speed can take a little bit longer than he used to. Morgan Whitaker needs to fit in. Giles hasn't played, and maybe that's brought the best out of Borges, but he's not really what we wanted from an output standpoint. So we have lost a little bit of that creative spark, but we're still doing enough. And we see in that QPR game, when we do have that chance to play, we do create some good opportunities, but we have to put the game to bed. I think yesterday you can probably take out. I would be interested to see if that was Boro's lowest ever expected goals metric since Carrick's been here. I wouldn't be shocked.
It's the lowest of the season.
Lowest of the season. So.
Well, I was saying to you, wasn't I, from the Swansea pod, it might be worth mentioning that against Swansea, our XG of 0.38 was the lowest recorded this season, and then we got and better that or worse that with 0.24 against Luton. So I am kind of concerned about our attack, not only through the data, and obviously it's a small sample size, 2 games I mentioned that, but just how disconnected we look. And I also feel like Carrick is trying to figure things out, and now's not really the time to figure things out. When you're trying to get into a playoff charge, you need complementary pieces to the jigsaw. And from January, we just didn't get that. And we brought in players that have needed time, and they just can't be afforded time, really, in the context of our season. So yeah, I am a little bit concerned, because it just feels like it is disjointed, and a texter mentioned it on BBC Tees yesterday, out of sync. And so, yeah, maybe mindful more than concerned, but there maybe is a level of concern there as well.
Yeah, and to round off the question and probably the pod as well, is that the international break for Boroughs came at probably the best time they could ever ask for. It is a time away from everything, a time to reset, a time to get players back up to speed and back in the group, and hopefully for the final run in, they can actually do something special. But whether we do that or not is yet to be seen. And I'm sometimes told in this podcast I'm a bit too positive, and even now I'm feeling a bit negative sometimes now, and I'm just feeling like, well, there's some things better to do on my Saturday, and that takes a lot for me to feel that way, to be honest. And
That Jonny rah Bullock.
I know all the rah, no idea, Well, it's.
I was about to say that kitchen's not going to clean itself on a Saturday.
Oh,
So.
I tell you what, it will not. Got a lot of cleaning down to do. Got to steam the floors, all that kind of stuff. Just got to do your jobs. But yeah, like I was saying, like this podcast, I'm either too positive or too negative, so it must be a good balance at some point. But yeah, I'm just a bit disassociated a little bit. I mean, I think that takes a lot, especially with all the work you do with a podcast, all the games that you go to and you watch, you dissect, you analyse, even the stuff people don't see when you're looking at what high scout at 11:30 at night and you're thinking, wonder what pattern of play this is. Even when that starts to get sucked out of you, that is a bit of a problem. And that's where Boro currently are. It kind of reminds me a little bit of the Tony Pulis season, where we just lost 6 or 7 games on the bounce, and everyone was just like, well, I can't wait for this to be finished. And a lot of people feel like that. So, but let's see. Let's see how it goes. Final international break. And hopefully Boro can get something. But guys, thank you very much for joining me as always. And listeners and viewers, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to the Boro Breakdown podcast. Don't forget to give us a 5-star rating on your podcast provider. That helps us get found, charted, and all that kind of fun stuff. But for right now, this has been the Boro Breakdown podcast, and that was our Boro Matchday Chatter in a pod. Up the Boro.